that's why I started reading the atheist books. I actually don't think the God is Not Great title was cringy at the time, and I understand why people look at it that way. It was at the time. Cringy isn't even the right word. It was intentionally inflammatory.
Fair.
And it worked for its purpose. And at the time, Hitchens was doing debates against men of the cloth. He was actually asked, a lot of people don't know this, he was asked to be, to argue devil's advocate against Mother Teresa's sainthood. And that part is like, that's the level that he was involved with this. He was a journalist going to a lot of these places of the world. You know that from the book, right? Like, religion was something that was a regular part of the world that he was interpreting. And
was he asked by the church to do that?
Yes.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. And they never did it again.
Oh, God.
He made a very good argument. That's the funny part, which they overlooked, of course. But,
yeah,
he at the time, it would be hard to imagine any other title being relevant, because we were also at a time where, like, faith was kind of peaking in our everyday life. We had a devout evangelical as president in the United States, in the most powerful country on earth, who kind of brought that faith into a lot of the things that he talked about. You could argue that we were maybe involved in a couple of wars at that time, that motivations partly included faith. This wasn't something that was just casual enough. And so I think that it's a result of those things that we look back now and think it's cringy, because we don't need to be so inflammatory. But it was so wildly accepted at the time. People have allowed their faith and their belief to become a lot more personal. Would you agree with that?
Like, they don't act on it in public ways. They only act on it like what they keep to them, their inside feelings.
Yeah, faith has sort of slowly become quite a bit restricted. Outside of the extreme evangelical camp, the nominal Christians, the regular Christians like yourself and other people you were describing, I think it more or less just became something more personal to them from secular pressure from the outside, and less something that they were willing to, walk with, through the halls of their high school with the Christian flag holding a Bible. That stuff kind of went away. Yeah.
Yeah. Could I segue into the actual topic to discuss,
Sure.
which would be, is it clear that there is a God? I think you and I can agree that it is clear that Yahweh, the God of the Bible, isn't real.
Right.
And I don't know if we really want to spend our time talking about why it isn't here. I want to talk about, is it clear or not if a God or deity exists?
Yeah.
Do you want to take the first round?
Yeah, so I think we've set up exactly. I thought this for a really long time, and a lot of the arguments for it are pretty clear. Probably the most convincing one, and I think the one that that most people find the most believable, or at least in terms of how they think. They might say something out loud like, "I could never believe that all of this is here by accident." Right? It feels like there's got to be something that set this entire universe and all of life into motion. There's got to be some kind of creator that started this, kicked it all off, right? There's got to be something that catapulted us to this moment. And there's that version of it, and there's also the people who take it from more of a kind of from the position of their egos. They feel like their life would have no purpose if there wasn't at least something bigger than themselves, some kind of creator. And they use that as their reasoning as to why they believe it.
Okay. Do you think it's interesting that people will use that argument to believe in Yahweh? And when I refer to Yahweh, that's like I'm referring to God of the Bible in the way that he refers to himself in the Bible. I say Yahweh to differentiate from just any general God or deity.
I actually don't think that's interesting, because I've met pagans who believe this.
Gotcha. I definitely do believe there are pagans who believe that. I think it's interesting that lots of Christians will believe that, will say that as their main reason for believing in Christianity. because they just simply couldn't see themselves believing in Allah. So like they're like, okay, there must be a God. I better go read the Bible. They jump straight to like, oh God, everything's here. Where'd it come from? Well, it had to come from a God. Well, better go check out the Bible. Like, wait, there's like a bajillion other gods you could go to for that, but you go to the Bible first because that's all you know, and you don't know why you're jumping there.
Well, I actually think that's why paganism's actually making kind of a comeback and growing.
Yeah. So you go ahead. You tell me why you think it's making a comeback.
I think the reason is because at some point people are becoming more educated and more thoughtful now. So those people who were casually like, well, I guess Bible's it for me. Because of the culture they're in, they haven't really thought about it that far. If we're honest, most people are not very thoughtful about this part of their lives. They don't go deeper than surface level. They know they want to live a good life. They know they want some meaning and purpose in it. And here's the best source of meaning and purpose and moral wisdom. So here's the Bible. It's right in front of them. But now that they start to question those things, the church has given them a lot of reasons to question those things in the West. And so given that new questioning, now they're kind of trying to look for what's the new thing that I can move to. And they're looking for that new thing that they can move to. And now that we have the internet and things, people have learned that the actual Christian traditions are all pagan, all the holidays, all those kinds of things. And so it's like, maybe that's where the real meaning lies. It's just that.
Do you think that's grift? Do you think the popularity of calling a bunch of Christian traditions pagan in roots is grift for people to like just clickbait articles?
I think it's been exaggerated and grifted upon. I think that we took an academic point, and that's what we do often in all of modern discourse, right? We take something that's more of an academic point, and we take it way the hell out of the academics, and we exaggerate it so that we can take advantage of it. Yep.
Okay. Fair. Yes, you're saying people have been moving to some sort of paganistic beliefs of general deities, rather than because of they understand that, or they see like maybe the Bible isn't the exact answer.
They're looking for spirituality and meaning and purpose, and this one seems generally unoffensive. And I think they also get a little bit of a that like. A lot of times this is people who are younger. There's a little bit of that teenage rebellion in it too, right? Like, oh, this is like a direct repudiation of the faith of my childhood. So that feels kind of good to rebel in that way. I've seen that. I've had that direct conversation with a number of people who identify as pagan.
Would we be able to say, could we replace the word pagan with spiritualism and have the same meaning, or do you directly mean like Norse gods?
Well, that's the funny thing. Because I can't leave well enough alone, and I'm a philosopher who loves this particular topic more than any, I will dive in with them. Like, do you really believe in the specifics of this? And it's clear that they don't. And it's clear that they don't. They mean well. They might think that they nominally believe it. It is more of a vague spiritualism. I just believe that there are powerful, forces at play that guide my life and give me meaning. Because
I think it's a lot more popular for people to move to like a spiritualistic belief that there is something bigger than it is for them to move to like when I think of pagan, dude, I think of like Norse gods like Thor and Odin and like you know what I mean. I think that's the colloquial term for paganism, but I think the intellectual term for paganism might be just anything non-Christian. Am I correct in that?
No. So pagan is a specific set of gods that like. And there are some specific beliefs that you will find pagans have, and they are starting to have their own religious rituals around this. Like the people who are picking this up now, and I agree with you that over the last 20 years, probably a more general spirituality is what people moved to. It's a very recent.
I think pagan is pretty small, and maybe a very inflammatory, like loud minority.
After today's episode, I mean, I can tell you that. Anecdotally, personally in my life, I have met in a number of different circles people identifying as pagan over the last 3 years, and I think it really could have to do with the pandemic.
Could that be the circles that you frequent in?
They're in different circles. I get where you're coming from, but I think you would be surprised. I think if you go look, there are actually news articles about how paganism is making a comeback. This isn't something I'm just like. My
what is paganism then? tell me that. Like, what do you define it as?
So paganism is, well, that's the problem, is how do you define something that is being redefined in real time? Because
But is it like Norse gods or is it not?
it's not Norse gods. So pagan gods is like the Roman gods and like some of those, like it's kind of like all of that mixed. They believe in a pantheon of gods going all the way back from the Romans all the way up through the Norse ones. Like it's kind of a big broad stroke. That's the modern pagan. I don't think that's the original pagan tradition, but that's the that's kind of like the modern thing that's emerging from these new pagans that I've talked to. It's never really clear. And they also, they're non-committal. They're not in committal. They're like, well, I don't really believe in any specific one. Like, it's more like the general idea. And there's a lot of cloak and dagger. You wouldn't understand my personal faith when you talk to people who are going in this direction.
I see. So it is just spiritualism. It is just I believe in there's something out there. It could be this, it could be that. We're going to have these fun little rituals that don't really like mean anything.
Right.
Specific.
So the reason why I find it interesting actually has nothing to do with the specifics of pagan belief. I think that at the end of the day, there's one fundamental flaw in logic to stake my flag on the question of the day, right? Is are there good reasons to believe? Are there good reasons to believe that there is a God? This is a very elaborate and personal emotional version of what's called the God of the Gaps argument. It's I can't explain something. I can't understand something. And wherever that place is that I can't explain or understand something, I'm going to put in a belief that I feel like must be true or works well enough. And so that's what most people are doing when they get onto whether it's paganism or some other vague spirituality. It's I can't explain why everything is here and why I feel like I should have purpose, why I feel like I should have meaning. So there must be something. So I'm going to choose to believe in it. And I think that's a logical flaw. That's a misstep.
Okay. Fair. Do you think it is clear that there is a God? Yes or no?
Hard no.
Hard no. I actually would put a hard yes.
I know. Here we go.
Okay. I guess I'll take first round because I brought it up. So you could call this God of the Gaps, but I do believe the logic is sound. The first and foremost axiom of this is something can't come from nothing, because then that truly wouldn't be nothing. Then it had to be something. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So where does something come from? Where does anything come from? Well, it just can't come from nothing. So I think there would have to be some sort of beyond us deity that would create it. I'm not saying he has an interest in what we do. I'm not saying he controls anything past that. So this deity, relative to me, doesn't... I could say he doesn't care about me. I don't know if he cares about me. He doesn't give a name. He doesn't even make it clear who or what he is. But I do think it is clear that something has created something. And I would call that the deity.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, that's the whole argument. That is as far as I can go with it.
Okay. So what would be distinguishable from what you just said of calling it like the deity and also calling it the origin of everything?
The only thing I would say is I believe this deity would have to have some supernatural capability beyond our universe and our regular, I guess I'll just call it universe.
Sure.
That it would have to be infinite in a way, because then you could go turtles all the way down. Well, where did that deity come from? You know?
Right.
Well, it has to be outside of that bound of logic. It would have to be. It would have to be outside that. Yes.
Yeah.
Something that I do know is, like, at least within our bounds of logic, is our universe. That something can't just be created from nothing, because that nothing wouldn't actually be nothing at that point.
Sure.
So we do need some sort of supernatural deity that's outside of our bounds of reality to at least start that.
Okay. At that point, I don't think you know what you're talking about, and I don't think anyone else who speaks this way can possibly know what they're talking about. First of all,
Okay, in what ways?
the word supernatural is illusory. It can't mean anything. Because by the moment we could absolute reason about it, know anything about it, think anything about it, the moment we could do that, we'd actually immediately be redefining whatever that thing is as natural. For it to be everything that we are is a product of the natural world. Everything that we think about is a product of the natural world. Our thought chemistry, like all of that, right? So the moment you say supernatural, you've stepped into a realm of something that no longer makes any sense because you can't conceive of something outside of everything that nature encompasses everything we could possibly know, think about, or do. So
I cannot conceive of what its properties are, but I can conceive that there is something that exists beyond our boundaries.
you can conceive of it, but that doesn't mean you're logically consistent in doing so. We can conceive of a lot of things that are logically inconsistent.
Okay.
So roll with me for a moment longer.
Okay.
So again, you're saying I can't conceive of what its properties are, but you definitely have given it a property. You've given it the property of being able to create a universe.
Okay, fair. I have, because the universe exists.
Right. So I don't think you can know that, and I don't think you can give it that property without demonstrating it and having a clear line of logic to do so. That's just a move you're willing to make. It's kind of a priori assumption that you're making there.
Okay. I'm not familiar with a priori.
A priori means just like, so we have an a priori assumption that about the concept of two, right? This is one water bottle. This is two. I don't need to have an argument or a logical a logical
It's
explanation
assumed, you mean?
as to but it's like deeper than an assumption. It's that you have a properly basic understanding of what two means, and you don't have an argument for why two exists. You just know it when you experience it. And so on kind of a level of that, you're kind of making that a priori pulling yourself up by your intellectual bootstraps, just saying, well, it has to be this. It must be this. It's got to be. There's got to be a creator.
Okay. And then I will go back to before creator. Let's say before I mention creator. Things exist.
Yes.
So we could argue that things have always existed.
We could argue that.
Okay. I would ask you directly, why do things exist? But I think the only answer we can give is we don't know.
Right.
Okay.
And in contrast, if things always existed versus started to exist, why one or the other? Also, we don't know. We're not capable of understanding the non-existence, because the only thing we're capable of understanding is existence.
I think it's logical to believe that things couldn't always have existed.
Okay. That's a different argument.
Now, it could be just to my own limit of understanding of humanness.
Sure, yeah.
This has got me feeling some type of way, Johnny.
And listen, I made the exact same argument as you. And I made it for years. Until I realized that it I just fundamentally intellectually... And the thing is nothing actually changes on this. Everything you think in your life that could possibly change based on this belief, based on having this belief that there must be something rather than nothing.
Nothing can change. Yeah, because I'm simply positing that whatever this being is created it and left it.
Right.
It doesn't mean he has an interest in what I do every day. It doesn't mean he's going to judge me after I die. It doesn't mean anything at all. It doesn't mean he ever gave an opinion on how we conduct our lives. I'm just, I guess because things exist, I feel like they must have been created at some point.
Could be.
And whatever made that, I'll call that the deity. And I don't think we can make any assumptions about this deity past that it was created.
Yeah, I also don't think I know that something could have intentionally made it. Like, because in our universe, we know what consciousness is like. But I think the other property that you're smuggling into this logic, and a lot of people are when they make this argument, is they're smuggling consciousness in.
Like the being has a real intention when it does.
Yeah.
This.
Well, because again, if it was just if it's just a clump of supernatural matter that accidentally, created our universe while playing a kick drum solo, like with no intelligence to it.
Right.
Yeah. Like
even if it did it unintelligently.
Right. Then you're still left holding an empty sack, because that's there's no difference between that and not believing anything at all.
Functionally, I'd say there's no difference, but intellectually, I think there is a difference.
Where do you think that difference lies? I'm curious.
Are you saying that whether there is a deity that made something, or whether it's always been here and the deity doesn't exist, that there's no difference?
Yeah, I think from intellectually, I don't think there's any difference. Have you ever heard of the Russell's teapot argument?
Yeah, there could be like a teapot on Mars, like floating around it right now.
Right.
But explain it for me
So Russell's teapot is basically, there could be a teapot that's been, jettisoned out into space and, got caught in the gravity well of a distant planet and is going around there. Now, I know that teapot is there, right? I know it's there. Nothing about the universe changes because of that. Nothing because of, it doesn't have any impact on anyone's life. I don't have any evidence, right? Like, I can't prove the teapot's there. We can't see it. We can't interpret it. And so the question is, what's the difference between that and no teapot at all?
Yeah. Functionally, there's no difference whether the teapot isn't there, and that's all I mean. That's like, I think we can posit that this deity exists, but functionally, there's nothing that I can derive from that. I can't derive that there's a meaning to life from that. I can't derive that I should live my life this way or that way. Other than the fact that the teapot exists or not, that's it. So it doesn't extend anything past the teapot.
So here's why intellectually I think that's invalid.
Okay.
Because I think I could make the same case that it's obviously not a deity. It's an infinitely expanding, collapsing multiverse full of failed and possible universes that are bouncing around doing that. And it's like that
doesn't work. No, because that's just a turtles all the way down.
How do you figure?
That's just another layer of saying, well, it's not the deity. What created us was another multiverse that bumped into us and bloated us into existence. Well, then that's just another turtle down, where you're just like, okay, well, what created the multiverses? You get what I mean?
Yeah, because you're looking for a first mover. That's what that's called.
Correct.
A first mover.
Yep.
You're looking for a first mover. And I think to do that, you'd have to find the first move first.
The first move?
Yeah. Yeah, because
we can posit that there was a first move, because whether we are on the 9th, 100th, or nth move right now, we can posit that there was a move before us, and then we can posit all the way back to there was a n minus 9, 10, 20 moves.
Here's why we can't.
Have been a first move.
Because that argument smuggles in time as a concept.
Time?
Mm-hmm. So time is something we experience as part of the natural world, but it's actually not real. Like, time is an illusory concept. There actually is no such thing as time.
I will follow you there. Okay.
Yeah, like time is just something that it's how we measure changes in states of our physical universe. It's part of the natural world. And so any being that would have existed outside of our universe, right? This is the famous argument, it has to be timeless and spaceless. Well, our universe could also be timeless. We don't even know. Time could just be our first-person conscious experience of phenomenon that we're not wired to understand, because we're only able to understand our conscious experience of things. And so I'm not even sure. We'd have to prove that there was a first time. That like
Do you
time
think
started.
the argument "I think, therefore I am" holds up?
Yeah, I think that one does. Absolutely, of course.
So we can posit that we exist in terms of the consciousness that exists in us.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything else around me could be an illusion.
Okay, so let's take that then. Let's forget the universe. Us, the consciousness. We exist.
Yeah.
I'd argue that it would have to come from somewhere. It can't come from nothing, because then that nothing wouldn't truly be nothing.
Sure.
So whatever brought my consciousness into existence, I would argue be...
I absolutely agree that there's something else that would have had to be out there to like something beyond my conscious experience must exist, right? It wouldn't make any sense for my consciousness by itself to just be, and there to be nothing else. And I think we have very
Fair.
good reasons to believe that. But that doesn't.
So would you
but that
call
doesn't
that
mean
the
I think
deity?
No, because I don't know what that means, and I don't think you
I
know
would
what it
call
means
that
either.
the deity.
I don't think you
Are
know
you
what
saying-
it means either.
Are you saying that outside of your consciousness, that it created your consciousness?
No, I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm simply
Okay.
saying something else like something else outside of my consciousness must exist, right? So the second assumption I can make after, okay, I'm conscious, I'm thinking, the lights are on. So there is something that it's like to be me. Therefore, I do exist. My conscious experience exists. The next thing I can say is something beyond my consciousness must also exist. But I don't know anything
Why?
else.
Why do you say that?
Why do I say that?
Yeah.
Well, because I have very good reasons to think that I haven't always been conscious.
Okay, why?
For starters, at times my consciousness becomes very dim when I go to sleep at night or during a medical procedure. At times, the lights seem to go all the way out and then come back on for reasons that are mostly mysterious to me.
Okay. Do you believe that happened before you were born in some way?
Not for the purpose of the reasoning that we're going down here. I believe that for separate, more examinations of the physical universe, because we have good reasons to think consciousness is clearly tied to our brain matter.
Okay. I'm okay with believing that consciousness is purely a construct of our organs.
Sure.
Even though it seems very mysterious and very real to me. I also have a certain faith in things that I don't understand about our brain functioning, that it could create a very real experience for me.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Like, I believe that there's a possibility that something can create something so real to me that it fools me every day.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But that doesn't get it away from the substrate of the brain. Again, we have really good reasons. We have really good reasons to believe that consciousness is a product of brain matter.
Fair. And I concede there. I believe that's true too.
Yeah.
So that takes us back another turtle down. Where's brain matter come from? Where's matter in general come from?
But yeah, eventually I can't, like, when we say come from, that smuggles in time. And so it actually leaves the question of, well, where does time come from?
Okay, we can start with time then. What do you think then?
I'm not sure time exists. I don't think I've ever discovered, and I don't think anybody else who's smart has ever discovered, way smarter than me, I don't think we've ever discovered the origin of time. We sort of have a theory that at the moment of the hot Big Bang, that's when time and space became what it is, right? But that's our best working model right now. And it's convenient, right? It's convenient that happens to make sense to us, because anything else we could possibly conceive of, we couldn't conceive of. You really can't imagine the universe before time.
You know, are you pointing to the fact that, let's say, a person travels around a black hole interstellar style, they don't age as fast as the people outside the black hole does?
I mean, that is one piece of a myriad of evidence to suggest that time is very mysterious and maybe non-existent. But there's a ton of evidence to this fact.
And we could posit that as someone gets closer and closer to the center of this black hole, that time for them slows down to, logarithmically, to an infinitesimal point.
Right.
But the people outside of it, it's going at our normal rate, quote unquote.
Yeah, that's the basic general relativity. Yep. So
Very interesting.
So here's the problem with that. Obviously, no one can ever do it because, putting a human to those speeds, like, we're not even sure exactly what would happen if we accelerated matter past those speeds. Like, we don't know. That's something we haven't figured out in science. It would answer a lot of questions for us if we could figure it out. But we don't know. It could be that is where matter ceases to be matter.
Could.
Don't know. Again, if it's guesses, it is guesses all the way down, not just turtles. Like, at some point, you're making it up. And that's my point about the first mover argument. At some point, you have to be intellectually honest with yourself and realize that you're making it up. You want to believe it. It would make things seem more
God damn it, Johnny. It would be convenient. Fuck.
It would make things seem to be more, structurally sound, right? But you can't know that, because you are so far away from all the things you would have to know to be able to know that it was created. Because, again...
Can you pick this apart for me in a shorter paragraph?
Suggesting...
I believe that
go ahead.
A deity exists. I believe that a deity exists simply because things exist, and I feel like something had to have created those things, because those things can't just come from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, therefore... I posit that something must exist that created them. And I know zero properties about this being past the fact that it made existence.
The direct...
Of our natural world.
Right. So the direct counter argument to that is...
Okay.
Going back in my brain here. So the direct counter argument to that is... By created, you mean began to exist.
Our world.
Right. Matter. Like our universe.
Yeah, our world doesn't matter. Our universe.
Yeah,
Fair.
our universe began to exist. You're smuggling in that by saying created, because you actually don't know if our universe began to exist versus it always existed. You do that based on this question, I don't know how something could come from nothing. But that's based on a mere human understanding of something and nothing, which is restricted to our experience of time and space in a fourth dimensional universe where we experience time, decay, motion, all of those things. Like, all of that comes from our mere human understanding of things that are clearly way beyond our human conscious experience.
Would it be fair to say that my argument falls apart if we concluded the other possibility that things have always existed?
No, I actually don't think you could even say that. I think that that's illusory too. Because, again, the idea that things either began to exist or always existed, those two things philosophically, to me, you don't know what you're talking about.
Interesting.
The only thing that you can interface with is things do exist. I can't know what it's like for things to not exist. So philosophically, I'm going to have to restrict my philosophical thinking into everything. The only thing that's worth doing any kind of philosophical thinking about is a world where things do exist. I don't know if they began to exist. I don't know if there's such a thing as things existing without the concept of time. I don't think if there's such a thing as nothing existing. I have no idea. I only can deal with the world where things do exist, because that's the world I find myself in. So anything else, any pontificating or philosophizing about anything else, is just wasted energy.